Please do not send me back again. Ethan Walker stopped beneath the broken heater vent and looked toward the voice. The relocation terminal was nearly empty at that hour, washed in white light and the gray reflection of electrical snow striking the windows. Somewhere behind the service wall, an old circulation fan clicked every 6 seconds. The air smelled of wet metal, overheated wiring, and the bitter coffee someone had forgotten beside the registration desk. A woman sat alone beneath the departure board with 2 battered suitcases pressed against her knees. Her skin was deep sapphire blue, faintly luminous beneath the cold lamps. Dark hair with a blue sheen fell over one shoulder. A red identification band circled her wrist. Ethan noticed the number printed across it before he noticed anything else. Return 6. The woman followed his gaze and covered the band with her other hand. I thought you were the next sponsor, she said. Her voice was controlled, but control had become work. Ethan looked down at the orange maintenance badge clipped to his coat. I am here for the heater. She glanced toward the ceiling vent, then back at him. Then I am sorry. For what? Speaking to you. Ethan set his tool case on the floor. Across the terminal, Margaret Hale sat behind the placement counter, sorting documents into stacks without looking up. Ethan had repaired half the environmental systems in Haven Ridge, but he had never seen a person processed like damaged equipment. How long has she been sitting there, he asked. Margaret finally raised her eyes. Since the evening shuttle. The station is 49 degrees. The auxiliary heaters are failing. I noticed. He opened the vent panel, but his attention stayed on the woman. She had wrapped a thin travel blanket around her shoulders. One corner had been repaired with blue thread. Both suitcases carried old route labels, each placed over another, forming thick layers at the handles. She looked prepared to move again before anyone asked. Ethan removed a burned relay from the wall. What happens if the heater is not fixed tonight? The waiting area closes at midnight, Margaret said. And she goes where? Margaret lowered her voice. The closed residency sector. The woman heard her anyway. Her fingers tightened around the blanket. Ethan replaced the relay and reset the system. Warm air moved through the vent with a low mechanical breath. The woman did not relax. Closed residency sounds permanent, he said. It is supervised long-term placement. Can residents leave? Margaret aligned the papers more carefully. Not without review. How long does review take? That depends. On what? Compliance. The words settled colder than the room had been. Ethan looked again at the red band. Why was she returned 6 times? Margaret opened the top file. Failure to adapt. Social withdrawal. Ingratitude. Difficulty accepting household structure. The woman's face remained still, but light moved beneath her sapphire skin in a faint pulse. Ethan had read enough equipment reports to recognize copied language. Every phrase sounded clean because it had been used too many times. What is her name, he asked. Margaret hesitated before answering. Claire Dawson. Ethan faced her. Claire, I am Ethan. She looked at him carefully, as if names were promises people often regretted. You should not be speaking to me. Why? Because they may think you are interested. I am interested. Fear crossed her face before hope had a chance. Please do not say that unless you understand the form. Ethan looked at the papers Margaret was holding. Then show me the form. Margaret stiffened. You are not an approved sponsor. I own independent residential land. I maintain my own habitat systems. That qualifies me to apply. Claire shook her head. Do not do this because you feel sorry for me. Ethan picked up the file, but did not open it yet. I do not know you well enough to feel sorry for you. She stared at him. Then why? He looked at the red band around her wrist. Because no one should be counted by how many times other people failed them. Margaret closed the file with one hand. The transfer order activates at sunrise. Outside, electrical snow flashed blue against the glass. Claire pulled the blanket closer. Ethan placed his palm on the closed file. Then we have until sunrise to read everything they hoped no one would question. Margaret moved the file out of Ethan's reach. You cannot simply rewrite a placement contract because you dislike the language. Ethan pulled a chair toward the counter and sat down. I have not read it yet. You are not authorized. Then authorize me. Claire remained beneath the departure board, watching them with the stillness of someone who had learned that attention usually came before disappointment. The repaired heater pushed warm air through the terminal, but she kept the blanket around her shoulders. Ethan noticed she had not moved either suitcase. Independent landowners can submit emergency residency requests, he said. Margaret's expression tightened. Temporary requests. Show me the clause. She opened a legal screen and turned it toward him. Blue text filled the display. Ethan read slowly. The agreement described Claire as a dependent resident. It gave the sponsoring household authority over work assignments, transportation, medical scheduling, and termination of placement. The final section allowed the sponsor to return her without review during a 90-day trial period. Ethan looked at Claire. Did all 6 families sign this version? Yes, she said. Did anyone explain it in your language? They said the translation system was accurate. That was not my question. Her fingers tightened around the blanket. No, Margaret tapped the counter. The standard form has been approved by the Colonial Council. That does not make it fair. Fairness is not the issue. Ethan looked back at the screen. It should be. He took the stylus from beside the terminal and drew a line through the return clause. The system flashed red. Protected language cannot be modified. Margaret stared at him. What are you doing? Removing the part that lets one person call a place home while the other person can be sent away without warning. The contract will not validate. Then we use a different contract. Claire stood up too quickly, one suitcase tipping against her knee. She caught it before it fell. You do not understand, she said. The support payment only applies if I am registered as dependent. Ethan turned toward her. I do not want the support payment. Everyone says that before they see the cost. What cost? Margaret answered for her. Food allocation, medical adaptation, environmental controls, translation access, transportation credits. Ethan glanced toward the repaired heater vent. I maintain environmental systems for half the ridge. I grow most of my own food. My vehicle has 2 seats whether one person uses it or not. Claire looked at him as though practicality frightened her more than generosity. And when I disappoint you? You will probably disappoint me. Margaret blinked. Claire's face closed. Ethan continued before either could speak. I will probably disappoint you too. That is not a reason to build an exit only I can use. The terminal rejected the edited document again. Ethan opened the colony registry from his maintenance tablet. There is another category, he said. Equal resident. Margaret gave a short, humorless laugh. That requires shared household access, independent legal standing, and unrestricted departure rights. Good. It also removes your authority to terminate placement. Better. Claire stepped closer to the counter. You would give me unrestricted access to your home. If you live there, it should be your home too. You do not know me. That can change. You may regret it. That can happen. Her sapphire skin brightened faintly beneath the station lights. Ethan saw the reaction and looked back at the form instead of staring. Do you want to leave this terminal with me? He asked. Claire glanced toward the red band on her wrist. What happens if I say no? Then I finish repairing the heater, and you make your own decision. Margaret lowered her voice. Her transfer order activates in 5 hours. Ethan opened the equal residency application. Then she should have a real choice before that clock runs out. Claire stood silent for several seconds. Then she walked to the counter and placed one finger against the identity scanner. I will read every line first, she said. Ethan moved the screen toward her. So will I. The system processed their signatures, paused, and displayed a final warning. Standard return privileges unavailable. Ethan pressed accept. Claire did not. Not yet. She read the sentence twice, then looked at him. You cannot send me back under this agreement. I know. Even if I am difficult, you are allowed to be difficult. Even if I leave, you are allowed to leave. Her hand hovered over the confirmation field. Then why call it a home? Ethan looked at the 2 worn suitcases beside her chair. Because leaving and being returned are not the same thing. Claire pressed accept. The red band around her wrist unlocked with a soft click and fell open. The red band landed on the counter with a sound too small for what it meant. Claire stared at the open clasp as though it might close again if she moved too quickly. Ethan did not pick it up. He let it remain between them while Margaret completed the final registry transfer. Outside, the electrical snow had weakened to a silver haze. By the time they reached the parking platform, the sky above Haven Ridge was turning pale blue. Ethan carried one suitcase only after Claire handed it to him. She kept the other close to her side. His utility vehicle was old, warm, and smelled faintly of soil, machine oil, and cedar from the tool rack behind the seats. Claire sat upright during the entire drive, both hands resting on the unopened suitcase in her lap. She watched every road marker and every turn. Ethan did not ask why. Haven Ridge lay 12 miles beyond the terminal, where the colony lights thinned into dark fields beneath the mountains. His house stood at the edge of a greenhouse complex, a narrow two-story structure built from weathered gray panels and local stone. One porch light glowed above the front door. No security officers waited outside. No household staff appeared when the vehicle stopped. Claire looked through the windshield. This is all. The house, the greenhouse, and a water pump that complains every morning. How many residents? 2 now. The words made her grip tighten around the suitcase handle. Ethan noticed, but he only stepped out and opened the rear storage compartment. He carried his tools toward the porch while she followed several feet behind. The front door recognized his wrist tag and unlocked. Warm amber light filled the entryway. The house smelled of coffee grounds, clean wood, and the faint mineral scent of greenhouse water. Nothing matched the polished homes from Claire's previous placements. The furniture had been repaired more than once. A heating pipe ticked inside the wall. A pair of work gloves rested beside a bowl of loose screws. Your room is upstairs on the left, Ethan said. The bathroom is across from it. The kitchen system answers to voice commands, but the manual controls are under the counter in case it stops listening. Claire stood near the doorway without removing her coat. Where is the schedule? What schedule? Work assignments, meal times, household obligations. Ethan set her suitcase at the bottom of the stairs. There is no schedule. Then what am I expected to do? Tell me if something breaks before it becomes expensive. She waited for more. He gave her none. There must be conditions, she said. Do not disable the fire alarms. Do not feed the greenhouse heater after midnight because it makes the pipes knock. If you use the last coffee filter, write it on the board. That is all. That is what I remember before breakfast. Claire looked toward the hallway as if another person might appear and reveal the joke. Ethan crossed to a small control panel beside the stairs. He entered his code, then selected resident access. Hold out your hand. She hesitated. For what? The house needs your biometric pattern. Why? So it knows you live here. Claire placed her palm against the scanner. Blue light moved beneath her fingers. The system recorded her temperature range, pulse pattern, and environmental preferences. A calm voice announced that resident Claire Dawson had been granted full access to climate control, communications, doors, emergency systems, and property records. She withdrew her hand. Full access. Equal resident means equal access. Ethan opened a drawer beneath the panel and removed 2 small metal keys. He placed them on the entry table. The black key is for the front door if the power fails. The silver one controls the manual house system. Claire looked at him. You are giving me both? They are copies. And where are yours? In my pocket. She studied the keys, but did not touch them. Ethan lifted his tool case. I need to check the greenhouse heat exchanger. The wall may make a loud sound when the outside temperature drops. It is annoying, not dangerous. He started toward the back door, then stopped. Your room locks from the inside. I do not have an override unless there is a fire. Claire looked toward the stairs. You do not inspect it? It is your room. He left her alone in the entryway. For several minutes, she did not move. Then she picked up both keys and carried her suitcase upstairs. The bedroom was simple: a bed, a desk, a deep window facing the greenhouse, and an empty closet. No camera watched from the ceiling. No instruction list waited on the pillow. Claire placed both suitcases beside the wall without opening them. She tested the door lock once. Then again. Before lying down, she slipped the black key and the silver key beneath her pillow, close enough to find in the dark. The wall made its first loud knock at 2:17 in the morning. Claire woke with both hands beneath her pillow, fingers closed around the 2 metal keys. For one confused second, she thought someone had entered the room. Then the heating pipes groaned again, and the air turned colder. Frost formed along the lower edge of the window. The house control panel beside the door blinked amber, then red. Thermal circulation failure. Claire sat up slowly. Her sapphire skin had begun to glow beneath the darkness, first along her hands, then across her throat and face. The light always came when her body struggled to regulate temperature or fear. The first family had called it disruptive. The second had demanded she cover it with thick fabric. The fourth had written that the glow frightened visitors. Claire pulled the blanket around herself and waited for footsteps in the hallway. None came. Instead, she heard a tool case open downstairs. Metal clicked against metal. A cabinet door closed. Then Ethan's voice came through the house speaker at low volume. The main heater has failed. Your room is still holding at 66 degrees, but it may drop. What temperature do you need? Claire stared at the speaker. 78. All right. He did not ask why. The floor vent opened, and warmer air began moving into her room. A second message appeared on the wall panel. Priority heat redirected to upper bedroom. What about the rest of the house? She asked. It will be colder. That is not equal access. It is equal access. You need more heat than I do. Claire crossed the room and opened the door. The hallway was dark except for a strip of amber emergency light. Ethan stood at the bottom of the stairs wearing a work jacket over his sleep clothes, one hand inside the open heating panel. His breath was faintly visible. Your skin is brighter, he said, but his voice carried no alarm. He looked at the temperature reading instead of staring at her. Does the light mean the cold is affecting you? It means my body is compensating. Is 78 enough? Yes. Humidity? 45%. He entered the number into the manual controls. The house fans changed speed. Air filtration preference. Low mineral content. I can route the greenhouse filter through your room until morning. Claire tightened the blanket around her shoulders. You do not find it unpleasant? Ethan glanced up. The light. She nodded. It is part of how your body works. He returned to the open panel. The heater makes worse noises. The answer left her without a defense. She watched him remove a damaged circulation pump and set it on the floor. Can it be repaired? Yes, but not tonight. The replacement bearing is in town. Then where will you sleep? Down here. The lower floor will be cold. I have a coat. Claire looked toward the couch. Ethan had already placed a thermal blanket beside it, along with a small portable heater that faced the stairwell rather than the room where he planned to sleep. You moved the heat upstairs before checking your own room. Your temperature dropped faster. You could have used the portable unit. It would not warm both floors. So you gave it to the stairwell. Ethan tightened a valve and listened to the pipes. Heat rises. The house settled into a lower mechanical hum. Claire stood there for several moments, uncertain what to do with a kindness that did not ask to be noticed. You should sleep in the spare room, she said. There is no spare room. Then use mine. Ethan looked up at her. It is your room. Only for tonight. You need the climate controls. He closed the heating panel and wiped his hands on a cloth. I will be fine. Claire wanted to argue, but the words felt too similar to gratitude, and gratitude had always been treated like payment. Ethan carried the damaged pump toward the greenhouse door. Try to sleep, he said. I will keep the auxiliary system running. She returned upstairs. The bedroom was warm now, the air balanced exactly as she had requested. Her skin slowly dimmed until only a faint blue shimmer remained along her hands. Before closing the door, she looked down once more. Ethan was lying on the couch in his work jacket, one arm over his eyes, while the portable heater sent every degree of warmth toward the staircase. Morning arrived with the smell of fresh coffee and warm soil. Claire came downstairs expecting Ethan to mention the failed heater, the electricity cost, or the hours he had spent awake. He mentioned none of them. The damaged circulation pump sat in pieces across the kitchen table, each part cleaned and arranged in a careful row. Beside the coffee maker stood 2 cups. One was plain white. The other was deep blue. I did not know what you drink, Ethan said without looking up from the pump. So the machine has 3 options. Claire studied the second cup. You bought this for me. It was already in the cabinet. Then why was it not there yesterday? Ethan tightened a small bearing with a hand tool. Because there was only one person using the kitchen yesterday morning. She chose tea and carried the blue cup toward the window. A chair had been pulled out beside the glass, facing the greenhouse. Claire stopped before sitting. Is this yours? It can be. That was not my question. It is a chair. She looked at him. You always answer this way? Only when the answer should belong to you. She sat carefully, keeping both feet beneath her as though prepared to stand again. Outside, condensation moved down the greenhouse panels. Ethan repaired the pump while she watched the first light touch the rows of winter vegetables. Nothing was asked of her. By noon, that absence began to feel heavier than a list of rules. She found Ethan in the greenhouse replacing a pressure seal. A second pair of gloves rested on the workbench. They were smaller than his. What should I do? She asked. Whatever you want. That is not useful. Ethan pointed toward a tray of seedlings. Those need water, but only if you feel like helping. Claire picked up the watering wand. And if I do it incorrectly? The plants will complain tomorrow. She waited for him to correct her grip. He did not. Over the next several days, the house developed a rhythm. Ethan left before sunrise to repair colony systems. Claire checked the greenhouse moisture levels and learned which pipes knocked without failing. In the evenings, one cup waited beside the coffee maker and one chair remained pulled out near the window. He never asked whether she would use either. He simply prepared for the possibility that she might. Her suitcases stayed closed upstairs. Every night, she checked the keys beneath her pillow. Every morning, she returned them before leaving the room. On the fifth day, the house panel addressed her by name when she adjusted the greenhouse humidity. On the sixth, she found a second pair of insulated boots beside the back door. On the seventh, she opened the smaller suitcase. Only halfway. Enough to remove a folded shirt and a narrow metal box. She stopped when she heard Ethan enter the hall. He knocked on the open doorframe anyway. The replacement heater is installed. His eyes moved toward the suitcase, then away. Do you need help with anything? No, all right. He left before curiosity could become pressure. Claire sat on the floor for several minutes, staring at the half-open case. Then she took the metal box downstairs and placed it beside her chair. Inside were 6 folded documents, each bearing the seal of a former placement family. She had carried them from one home to the next without understanding every word. Ethan returned from the greenhouse and stopped when he saw them. What are those? Letters they made me sign. Did you read them? The translation system gave me summaries. May I? Claire hesitated, then handed him the first page. Ethan read in silence. His expression changed before he reached the end. The letter described her refusal to perform unpaid domestic labor as hostility. The second called her unstable for reporting a child left alone for long periods. The third described her discomfort at public events as ingratitude, though the attached note showed she had been displayed to donors without consent. Each document carried her signature beneath language she had never been allowed to fully read. Ethan placed the final letter on the table with unusual care. Claire, these are not complaints. They returned me because of them. They returned you because you told the truth. She looked at the 6 pages, then toward the chair he had kept ready beside the window. Will you return me when they come for these? Ethan did not answer quickly. He turned every letter face up, side by side, as if refusing to let any of them remain hidden. No, he said, but someone is going to explain why they made you sign them. Emily Walker arrived after sunset with a portable legal terminal and snow still melting along the shoulders of her coat. She was Ethan's younger sister, though Claire would not have guessed it from the way they greeted each other. No embrace, no dramatic concern. Emily placed the terminal on the kitchen table, looked at the 6 letters, and said, You called this an emergency. Ethan pointed to the documents. Read them. Emily did. The room remained quiet except for the greenhouse pump cycling behind the wall. Claire sat in the chair beside the window, hands wrapped around the blue cup. She watched Emily's eyes move across the pages. The first letter took less than a minute. The second took longer. By the fourth, Emily had stopped making notes. These translations were altered, she said. The summaries omit every complaint Claire made against the households. Ethan leaned against the counter. Can you recover the originals? If the registry still has the source layers. Emily connected the letters to the terminal and scanned each seal. Lines of legal text unfolded above the table, first in colonial standard, then in Claire's native language. Claire stood slowly. The words were clearer than any translation she had been given. She had not signed confessions of instability. She had signed incident reports. In the first home, she had refused 16-hour work schedules without pay. In the second, she had reported that a young child had been left alone overnight. In the third, she had asked to stop appearing at fundraising dinners where guests touched her luminous skin without permission. The fourth family had required her to surrender all private communication. The fifth had withheld translation access. The sixth had accused her of ingratitude after she refused to sign away medical consent. Each time, the program had removed the household's conduct and rewritten her resistance as a defect. They made me the problem, Claire said. Emily looked at her. They made you easier to return. Ethan's jaw tightened. He had been quiet through every recovered file, but anger showed in the way he folded his arms and did not move. Claire noticed because she had seen anger before. Usually it filled a room and demanded something from her. His anger remained aimed at the papers. What happens if we report this? she asked. Emily turned the terminal toward her. The placement office opens an investigation. The previous households may lose sponsorship licenses. The program director will be required to release the full archive. And my residency here? Emily hesitated. Thomas Pierce can challenge it. He signed every return order. If he claims Ethan bypassed placement law, he may suspend your status until review. Claire looked toward the stairs. Her half-open suitcase waited upstairs. The keys were still beneath her pillow. Then I should leave before he takes the house. Ethan looked at her. No, you could lose your land license. That is my decision. You said decisions should belong to the person who carries the consequences. They should. He placed the 6 letters in front of her. Which is why I am not filing anything until you decide. Claire stared at him. You are angry. Yes. Then why are you asking me? Because anger does not make your life mine to direct. Emily opened a secure submission window. You have 3 options. Keep the records private, file a limited complaint, or release the full archive to the Colonial Review Board. Claire looked at the signatures she had written without understanding, each one used to silence the truth it was supposed to preserve. If I release everything, can the other residents see it? Eventually, Emily said, if the board accepts the case. And if they do not, Ethan answered, then we make sure someone else does. Claire moved to the control panel and entered her residency code. The house recognized her immediately. Resident access confirmed. The words appeared beside Ethan's name, not beneath it. She returned to the table. Release the full archive. Emily pressed record. Claire gave her statement in her own language first, then repeated it in colonial standard. She did not apologize. She did not explain why the truth had made other people uncomfortable. When she finished, the terminal sealed the file and transmitted it. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then the house panel chimed. A legal notice appeared across the screen. Residency status under emergency review. Termination scheduled at sunrise. Ethan read the notice once, removed an unsigned return form from the placement file, and carried it to the small kitchen heater. Claire watched as the paper curled in the warm air and darkened at the edges. That will not stop the order, she said. Ethan let the ashes fall into the metal tray. No, he looked toward the 2 names glowing on the house panel. But it makes my answer clear. The inspectors arrived 20 minutes before sunrise, their white utility vehicle moving through electrical snow that hissed against the greenhouse glass. Claire stood beside the kitchen window wearing her dark travel coat, the red identification band closed loosely around her wrist. She had put it back on by choice. Ethan had not asked why. Outside, 3 officials crossed the yard behind Thomas Pierce, each carrying a legal tablet beneath a weather shield. Pierce stopped at the gate and waited for Ethan to open it. Ethan remained beside the front door. The property system recognizes your warrant, he said through the intercom. You do not need my permission to approach. The gate unlocked. Pierce entered with the confidence of someone accustomed to doors opening before anyone questioned what waited behind them. His coat was immaculate despite the storm. Claire Dawson, he announced when the door opened, your residency authorization has been suspended. You are required to return to supervised placement pending review. Claire felt the old instinct move through her body. Stay quiet. Pack quickly. Make departure easier for everyone else. Light gathered beneath her sapphire skin, visible along her throat and hands. Pierce noticed and gave one inspector a meaningful glance. Ethan noticed too. He lowered the hallway lights without speaking. The notice names me, Claire said. Her voice sounded steadier than she felt. You will address me. Pierce turned toward her. This is an administrative correction, not a negotiation. Then explain the correction. Your residency agreement was created through an improper classification. Equal resident is a legal classification, not for individuals with repeated placement failures. Claire held up the 6 letters. Those failures are under investigation. Pierce's expression barely changed. Unverified allegations do not suspend established records. Ethan stepped away from the doorway, leaving a clear path between Claire and the officials. He did not block the entrance. He did not answer for her. Pierce looked at him. Mr. Walker, continued interference may result in the suspension of your land license. She heard you, Ethan said. She will answer. Claire crossed the entryway and stood at the threshold. Snowlight reflected across the floor behind her. I will not return voluntarily. Pierce touched his tablet. Then the residents will be declared non-compliant. On what grounds? Obstruction of placement law. Emily's voice came through the house communication panel. Record that statement clearly, Thomas. Pierce looked toward the speaker. This is a closed inspection. Not anymore, Emily replied. Claire authorized public legal observation. The front gate camera activated. Beyond it, shapes emerged through the snow. Farmers, greenhouse workers, mechanics, teachers, and families stood along the road beneath thermal coats and portable lights. Ethan's neighbors. Some held printed copies of Claire's recovered reports. Others carried tablets displaying her full statement. No one shouted. No one crossed the property line. They simply watched. Pierce stared at them. This changes nothing. Claire stepped onto the porch. The electrical snow struck her coat and melted into bright drops. It changes who sees what you do next. She raised the red band so the camera could read the return count. 6 households signed complaints against me. 6 times, your office removed what happened before those complaints. You erased unpaid labor, denied translation, withheld medical consent, and called my refusal a character defect. One inspector lowered his tablet and looked toward Pierce. Another began reviewing the attached records. Pierce kept his voice controlled. These matters will be examined through proper channels. Until then, you must surrender residency. No, Claire said. The word did not shake. You may review my status. You may review the contract. You may review every statement I made. But you will not describe removal as surrender. Pierce turned to Ethan. If she remains after sunrise, the colony may seize this property as an unlawfully operated residence. The greenhouse pump cycled behind the wall. The porch light hummed above them. Ethan looked at the land he had repaired piece by piece, then at Claire standing outside with every exit open behind her. The house is not operating unlawfully, he said. It has 2 equal residents. Not after sunrise. A warning appeared on the property display. 30 seconds remained before the suspension order took effect. Pierce watched the timer with quiet satisfaction. Claire looked at Ethan. You could lose everything. Ethan reached into his coat and removed a sealed ownership tablet. Not everything. He placed it in her hands. The transfer screen was already open, and half the property had been assigned to her name. The ownership tablet glowed between Claire's hands while the suspension timer fell below 20 seconds. Half the house, half the greenhouse, half the water system, and half the land appeared beside her name. Not as a dependent, not as a protected resident, as an equal owner. Pierce stared at the transfer screen. This is an obvious attempt to obstruct lawful review. Ethan stood beside Claire beneath the porch light. It is a legal property transfer. You cannot transfer land during an active residency suspension. Emily's voice came through the house speaker. The transfer was filed 43 minutes ago. The registry has already verified both ownership shares. What you are looking at is the final acceptance screen. Pierce turned toward the inspectors. One of them checked his tablet, then nodded reluctantly. The filing time is valid. The suspension timer reached 0. The property display flickered. Claire's residency status vanished for one breath, then reappeared under a different category. Independent property owner. Full colonial standing. Pierce's expression tightened. A technical classification does not erase the investigation. Claire looked at the words beside her name. It does not need to. You could still lose this house. Then I will lose my house, she said. Not his house. Mine. The difference moved through her more deeply than the cold. Pierce looked toward Ethan. You barely know her. That was not a requirement on the ownership form. You are risking everything for someone who may leave tomorrow. Ethan glanced at Claire. She is allowed to. Pierce gave a short, disbelieving laugh. Then what is the purpose of this gesture? Claire knew the answer before Ethan spoke. In her first language, there was no exact phrase for permanent residence. There was only an older expression used by families who built their homes beneath migrating stars. Eternal shelter. It did not mean a person was bound to one place forever. It meant the door would remember them no matter how long they were gone. The promise belonged to the house, not to the person entering it. Claire looked at Ethan. Do you understand what you have offered? The electrical snow softened around them. He did not pretend confusion. I asked Emily about your language. Then you know an eternal home is not ownership of the person. Yes. It means I may leave. Yes. It means I may return after years. Yes. It means the door must still recognize me. Ethan reached into his pocket and removed the black metal key she had kept beneath her pillow. He must have found the spare copy in the kitchen drawer. He placed it in her palm and closed none of her fingers around it. "You can leave whenever you choose," he said. "The door will still know you." Claire felt the light beneath her sapphire skin brighten, not from fear this time, but from something she had almost forgotten how to name. Hope had always arrived disguised as a trial period. This was different. There was no deadline hidden beneath the promise. Pierce stepped forward with his tablet. "Do not sign until you understand the liability. You will become responsible for taxes, repairs, environmental inspections, and any penalties attached to this property." Claire turned the ownership screen toward herself. Good. She read every line. Ethan waited. The neighbors waited. Even the inspectors said nothing. At the bottom of the document, 2 acceptance fields appeared side by side. Ethan Walker, co-owner. Claire Dawson, co-owner. No name stood above the other. Claire pressed her palm to the screen. The registry scanned her identity and asked for final confirmation. She looked toward the greenhouse, where the lights glowed through the snow and the old pump complained behind the wall. She thought of the blue cup, the chair near the window, the smaller gloves, and the room that locked from the inside. Then she confirmed. The house panel chimed. Ownership established. Pierce lowered his tablet. "This does not end the review." Claire removed the red return band from her wrist. "No," she said. "It begins one." She handed the band to the nearest inspector as evidence. Then she turned toward the front door. The scanner recognized her before Ethan reached the steps. "Welcome home, Claire Dawson," the house said. She did not enter as someone rescued. She entered as someone responsible for protecting the place that had finally refused to return her. 4 months later, the red band no longer appeared in any official record. The Colonial Review Board suspended Thomas Pierce, reopened every disputed placement case from the previous 6 years, and required all residency contracts to be translated by independent systems before anyone could sign them. 3 former sponsors lost their licenses. 2 families issued public apologies. 1 refused. Claire discovered that justice did not always arrive as remorse. Sometimes it arrived as corrected files, unlocked doors, and rules were written so the next person would not be forced to fight the same battle alone. Haven Ridge changed with the season. Electrical snow gave way to clear mornings and long bands of gold across the mountains. The greenhouse expanded into the unused field beside the house. Ethan repaired the old irrigation lines while Claire designed warmer rooms along the eastern wall, each with private controls, interior locks, and 2 keys waiting on the table. The colony approved the building as a temporary residence for people whose placements had failed. Claire refused the word failed on every document. The new sign read Haven Ridge Transition House. No return labels. The first resident arrived with 1 bag and asked how long she was allowed to stay. Claire gave her the same answer Ethan had once given. "That is your decision." The second arrived carrying nothing. The third slept beside the front door for an entire week. Claire did not move her. She only left the porch light on and made sure the hallway stayed warm. Ethan never called the work heroic. He complained about water pressure, replaced cracked seals, and wrote coffee filters on the kitchen board whenever Claire forgot. The blue cup remained beside the machine. The chair near the window was no longer empty. One evening, Ethan returned from the northern pump station after sunset. The house recognized him at the gate, then announced that Claire had modified the entry system. "That sounds dangerous," he said as he stepped inside. "Only to people who ignore maintenance schedules," she replied from the kitchen. He removed his coat and noticed the red identification band mounted behind the front door. It had been flattened beneath a clear panel, the return count still visible. "Why keep it?" he asked. Claire looked at the band. "So no one who enters this house forgets what a number can hide." Ethan nodded toward the front of the door. 2 metal nameplates were fixed there at equal height. Ethan Walker, Claire Dawson. Beneath them, a smaller plate carried the words "Resident access belongs to the resident." Upstairs, the final suitcase sat open on Claire's bed. She had waited until the house became quiet. The first suitcase had contained clothing. The second had held the letters. The last contained folded route maps from every place she had been sent. Colored lines crossed planets, stations, and colony districts. Each destination had once been marked as temporary, hopeful, or suitable. None had become home. Claire unfolded the maps across the blanket. The paper smelled faintly of transport cabins and old storage rooms. For years, she had kept them ready so she would never be surprised by the next departure. Ethan stopped at the open doorway and knocked against the frame. Do you want privacy? No. He entered only after she moved aside. Claire gathered the maps one by one. She did not tear them. She did not burn them. They were part of the road that had brought her here, even if the road had not been kind. She folded them into a smaller square and placed them in the bottom drawer of the desk. Then she closed it. Ethan looked toward the empty suitcase. Are you packing? She turned to him. The question held no fear, no claim, and no hidden demand. Only the freedom to answer. No, she said. I am unpacking. She removed the last few belongings and arranged them in the room. A small carved figure went on the windowsill. A silver scarf hung inside the closet. The empty suitcase slid beneath the bed, out of reach and no longer ready. Downstairs, the porch light came on automatically as another transport approached the gate. Claire heard uncertain footsteps outside. Ethan looked toward the stairs. Someone new. Someone returned, she said. They walked down together. Claire opened the door before the visitor could knock. Behind her, the house was warm. Beside her, Ethan waited without speaking. They had returned Claire 6 times because no one wanted the weight of her truth. The human gave her a home strong enough to hold it.